I was focused on coming to California when I was like 9 years old.
Sam Elliott has always been the embodiment of rugged American strength, the deep voice, the iconic mustache, the calm presence, and the kind of old-school masculinity Hollywood rarely produces anymore. For more than 5 decades, he's been the steady force in westerns, dramas, and some of the most beloved films of all time. To millions, Sam Elliott isn't just an actor, he's a symbol. A reminder of a Hollywood era built on authenticity, grit, and heart. But now, at this stage of his life, heartbreaking news has shaken fans around the world. After years of maintaining his privacy and carefully guarding his personal life, Sam Elliott has finally revealed a tragic diagnosis, one that has forced him to slow down, reevaluate his future, and begin quietly saying goodbye to the world he's been part of for nearly 60 years. Behind that iconic voice is a man grappling with vulnerability, pain, and the kind of emotional reckoning he spent his entire career avoiding. For decades, Elliott carried the weight of Hollywood on his shoulders, always working, always delivering, always staying strong. But this time, the battle is different. It's personal. It's frightening. And it has changed everything for him, his family, and the fans who have admired him for generations. The truth he reveals now is not just about illness, it's about legacy, mortality, and the heartbreaking realization that even the strongest among us cannot outrun time. This is the emotional story behind Sam Elliott's tragic diagnosis, and the quiet farewell he never wanted to make. For most of his life, Sam Elliott was the picture of strength. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, and he didn't chase headlines. His presence alone commanded respect. With his towering frame, gravel-deep voice, and dignified calm, he built a career that didn't rely on gimmicks, it relied on authenticity. But what the world never knew was that beneath that steady exterior, Elliott had been quietly fighting something far more serious than anyone imagined. It began subtly, small changes that Sam brushed off as nothing more than age. A little fatigue here, a lingering cough there, moments where his breath felt shorter than usual. His family urged him to slow down, to take a break from travel and filming, but Sam always waved them off. He'd been working since the 1960s. He knew how to push through discomfort. It was part of his DNA. But over time, the symptoms grew harder to ignore. Nights became restless. Walking long distances felt heavier. He struggled to maintain the energy that once came so naturally. During a filming break, he experienced a sudden spell of dizziness, one serious enough that the crew insisted on medical attention. Sam, always the stoic cowboy, agreed reluctantly. What came next was something he never expected. The tests revealed something serious, far more serious than fatigue or age-related decline. A condition that explained the breathlessness, the exhaustion, and the physical strain he'd been hiding from the world. When doctors delivered the diagnosis, Sam listened quietly, absorbing the words with the same calmness he brought to every challenge. But inside, something shifted. For the first time in his life, he felt the ground move beneath him. He didn't fear pain. He didn't fear treatment. What he feared was the possibility that his life, his work, his legacy, his connection to fans across generations was beginning to close its final chapter. He thought of his wife, Catherine Ross, the woman who had stood by him for more than 4 decades. He thought of his daughter, his family, and the people who still saw him as an unbreakable pillar. Sam kept the diagnosis private at first. He didn't want sympathy. He didn't want headlines. He didn't want people whispering about him in past tense. He tried to continue working, but everything felt different. Roles that once came easily demanded more from him physically and emotionally. Early call times became draining. Long filming days took a toll he could no longer hide. For a man who built an entire career playing characters who never backed down, admitting vulnerability felt like betrayal. But the truth was inescapable. He couldn't fight this battle alone. And he couldn't keep pretending nothing was wrong. The people closest to him noticed the change before he said a word. They saw the effort it took for him to stay strong, the quiet moments where he fought for breath, the exhaustion that lingered in his eyes. Eventually, Sam knew he couldn't keep the truth hidden anymore. The diagnosis wasn't going away. It was reshaping his future whether he accepted it or not. That was when he finally opened up first to his family, then to a few trusted friends, and eventually to the fans who had loved him for decades. The revelation was heartbreaking, but it also explained what many had sensed. Sam Elliott, the timeless cowboy, was facing the toughest battle of his life, and for the first time, he began to consider something he had never imagined saying goodbye. After receiving his diagnosis, Sam Elliott found himself standing at a crossroads he never thought he'd face. For decades, he had been unstoppable, a man who worked through injuries, exhaustion, long hours, and grueling physical demands without ever once letting his audience see him falter. His career had survived shifting Hollywood trends, fading genres, and the disappearance of the classic Western star. But this was different. The illness didn't just affect his body, it forced him to confront his own mortality. And that was something Sam had avoided thinking about his entire life. At first, he tried to continue working, determined not to let the diagnosis define him. But soon, he began turning down roles he would have normally accepted without hesitation. Scripts piled up unread on his desk. Directors reached out with concern. Producers sent him heartfelt notes. The industry sensed something was wrong long before he said a word. For the first time in over 50 years, Sam stepped away from Hollywood not with a dramatic announcement, not with fanfare, but with a quiet, heartbreaking retreat. Those close to him said he simply didn't have the strength to keep pushing at the same pace. He'd spend long mornings resting, afternoons in reflection, and evenings watching the sun dip behind the hills on his ranch. The man who once traveled constantly, who thrived on set, who felt most alive in front of a camera, became still. His wife, Catherine Ross, later admitted that this was the hardest chapter of their life together. She watched the man she loved struggle with something he couldn't fix through sheer willpower. He had always been the protector, the strong one, the steady force in their family, but now he needed to lean on others. And asking for help was never easy for him. His daughter visited frequently, bringing light into days that felt heavy. Sam tried to remain upbeat for her, but she could see the truth in his eyes, the exhaustion, the fear, the acceptance slowly taking root. He had always been their rock. Now they were becoming his. Months passed before Sam finally shared his diagnosis with the public. It wasn't a planned press release or a dramatic interview. It happened during a quiet conversation with a group of longtime fans at a small private event. Someone asked gently why he'd stepped away from new film projects. Sam paused, looked at the floor, and spoke words he had been avoiding for far too long. "I'm dealing with something. Something that's taking a toll. And I'm not the man I used to be." It was the first time he had acknowledged it outside of his inner circle. His voice cracked. He didn't cry. Sam Elliott never cries in public, but everyone could see the emotion behind his words. The admission spread quietly at first, then quickly across social media. Fans expressed heartbreak, love, and deep respect for the man who had given them so much for so many years. But what surprised people most was not the diagnosis itself, it was his honesty. The vulnerability he had hidden for so long. Sam Elliott, the man who embodied unshakable strength, finally admitted that he was human too. And now, as he faced a future filled with uncertainty, he began preparing mentally and emotionally for something he had spent his entire life avoiding: the possibility of saying goodbye to Hollywood, to his craft, and to the millions who had carried him in their hearts for a lifetime. As Sam Elliott withdrew from the public eye, something unexpected began to happen. The silence that his illness forced upon him didn't just slow his life down, it opened doors he had kept locked for decades. For the first time, Sam was left alone with his memories, and some of them were heavier than the illness threatening his future. He began revisiting chapters of his life that he had spent years avoiding, the mistakes, the sacrifices, the moments when his dedication to acting cost him more than anyone ever realized. One regret weighed on him more than most: the years he spent away from his family. Hollywood had shaped him into a legend, but it also pulled him away from the people he loved most. Long nights on set, months spent filming on remote locations, years defined by pressure, ambition, and the need to keep succeeding. These were the silent costs of his career. His daughter once told him, gently but honestly, that she wished he'd been around more when she was young. Sam never forgot that. Now, as he faced the possibility of limited time, those words echoed in his mind with painful clarity. He also revisited his early struggles with Catherine Ross, the arguments, the distance, the emotional walls he built whenever work consumed him. Their marriage survived because Catherine understood the man behind the voice and the mustache. But Sam knew she endured more loneliness than she ever deserved. Now, in his quietest moments, that truth weighed on him. Then there were the roles he turned down, opportunities he let slip through his fingers, not because he didn't want them, but because he was afraid. Yes, Sam Elliott, Hollywood's symbol of fearlessness, had battled his own insecurities. He worried he'd be miscast. He worried he'd disappoint. And in some cases, he worried he wasn't enough. He'd never said those words aloud. Not once. But illness has a way of peeling back even the toughest exterior. As his body weakened, Sam found himself replaying the moment he nearly walked away from acting entirely. It was early in his career, when he was still struggling to land meaningful roles. He had nearly given up and returned home. The only thing that stopped him was a single sentence from a casting director who saw something in him long before anyone else did. "You don't act the part, you are the part." Those words carried him through decades of uncertainty. And now, as he reflected on his life, he realized something heartbreaking. He had spent so many years trying to prove himself that he forgot to appreciate how far he'd come. But regret wasn't the only thing waiting for him in the silence. There were wounds too, particularly the unresolved pain of losing close friends in the industry. Many of the actors he had grown alongside were gone now. Some to illness, others to tragedy, others to the simple passing of time. Each loss left its mark. Each absence reminded him that he was nearing the final pages of his own story. Sam also faced a truth he had avoided for decades. He had lived his life bracing against vulnerability. His entire persona, rugged, stoic, unbreakable, became armor. But this illness? It pierced straight through. Suddenly, the man who spent his life carrying others had to be carried. That was the hardest part. Yet somewhere within all the pain, there was also acceptance. He knew he couldn't change his past, but he still had the present and whatever future he had left. His regrets didn't break him. They softened him. He became more open, more reflective, more willing to let the people he loved see his heart. For the first time in decades, Sam Elliott wasn't hiding behind strength. He was living honestly raw, unguarded, and painfully real. But the hardest chapter of his story was still ahead. As Sam Elliott enters what may be the most fragile chapter of his life, he isn't interested in grand gestures, dramatic announcements, or a spotlight farewell. That was never his style. Instead, his goodbye is unfolding the same way he lived much of his life, quietly, humbly, and with a deep respect for the people who supported him through every stage of his journey. What he wants the world to know now is simple. He is not giving up. He is slowing down, yes. He is choosing peace over pressure. But he is still fighting, still hoping, and still grateful for every sunrise he wakes to. He has accepted his diagnosis, but he refuses to let it define him. Friends say his transformation has been profound. The man who once built emotional walls now welcomes vulnerability. He laughs more freely, cries without shame, and speaks openly about the fears he once buried beneath stoicism. He tells stories from his early days in Hollywood with a gentleness that surprises even those closest to him. And for the first time in decades, he fully allows himself to be cared for. His wife, Catherine Ross, has become his quiet anchor, steady, patient, and unwavering. Their bond, strengthened by years of shared battles, is now the center of his world. Every evening they sit together on the porch of their Oregon home, watching the sun sink behind the hills. Sam says it's his favorite part of the day, the moment he feels closest to himself. But the world hasn't forgotten him. Fans continue to send letters, artwork, and messages filled with hope. Some thank him for shaping their childhoods. Others say his characters got them through hard times. Many simply want him to know they love him. Sam reads every message he can, sometimes pausing to wipe a tear he once would have hidden. In his reflective moments, he admits he spent years worrying about whether he had done enough, whether his body of work would matter once he was gone. Now he sees the truth clearly. His legacy was never about fame. It was about heart. His characters carried pieces of himself, his loyalty, his integrity, his quiet strength. And audiences felt that authenticity in a way no award could capture. As his health shifts day by day, Sam has chosen to spend his time reconnecting with the people he loves most. He reaches out to old friends he hasn't spoken to in years, sharing laughter, memories, and sometimes apologies. He opens up to his daughter in ways he never did before. And he holds his wife's hand a little tighter. Knowing every moment is a gift he no longer takes for granted. His goodbye isn't about finality. It's about gratitude. Gratitude for a career that took him from obscurity to legend. Gratitude for fans who stayed loyal through every chapter. Gratitude for a family who understood the man beneath the Hollywood image. Gratitude for the life he was able to live fully, fiercely, and with purpose. Sam Elliott doesn't want sympathy. He doesn't want praise. He wants people to remember him as he truly was, a man who gave his all, loved deeply, worked hard, and stood tall even in the face of something he could not control. And perhaps the most heartbreaking truth is that he has already made peace with what lies ahead. He isn't afraid anymore. He is ready to accept, ready to rest, and ready to let the world remember him not for how he died, but for how he lived. His story, like his voice, will echo long after he is gone.